So this is tutorial number 3, and this is a review for your skills test. And we've already got the dragon balloon, and we've got the basket, and we've got the lines. Now we need to actually add the woman. So if we go to the woman on here, we want to select her, zoom in, use the quick selection tool. Make sure that you have a fairly good size selection tool. You can see I have to use the right brackets to make it bigger, and let's select her as best we can. Okay, and then if you don't get everything, just drag some more. Okay, this is going to be a hard one because the fact that you don't want to cut her nose off. So you do this part we don't want in here because I'm selecting her, which is the plus. So if we want to get rid of this, I hold the Alt key or Option key down and click around her chest area here, and let go of the key, and looks better. Now you just need to make sure that you get her nose as best you can. So if you want to, you can use one of these other tools like the lasso tool. Just make sure it's set in the add to selection icon up here, and you can kind of just drag around her nose just a little bit. You can see how I got that. And if you want to add more, you can too. If you want to go down here and go around her hair a little bit or something like that. But I think that's it. Now there's areas like this where you don't want this to be here. So instead of plus, if you hold the Alt or the Option key down, Alt on Windows, Option on Mac, it'll take it away. So in here, see, I didn't get this. The part of her sweatshirt tied around her waist, the tip of her toe, you get that. There we go. Back of her heel maybe a little bit. Okay. And so that's how you can use the lasso tool to work with this. Okay. So you get that selection as best you can. Zoom in a little bit so you can see what you're doing. And since we're in a selection tool, select and mask is open. So what we want to do is we want to look at this real closely, and we want to say, well, we want to feather a little bit. We're going to see if we can use this radius, edge detection radius a little. And that does, it's not really, that's working okay with the smart radius, okay? You can see it's pretty detailed in here. And then if we want to shift the edge, if you want to shift this a little bit, you can see it shifts it in, but you really don't want to do that hardly at all. And let's see the feather, just a little bit of feather, hardly any at all, maybe 1 pixel. Okay, and then just go ahead and go down to the bottom where it says options to select, and just do selection, say okay, and then all we have to do is go under edit, copy, then go back to your background image that you're working on, your final image, and then go ahead and say edit paste in here. Okay, and there she is. So one of the things you'll notice when you put her in here, if you compare it to the final, she's in a different direction because you'll notice that the light on her is coming from behind her. So what we need to do is we need to flip her also, just like we did with the other one. And then let's take a look and see if we need to make her any smaller. Looks like to fit in, she looks like she needs to be a little bit smaller. So go ahead and hold the shift key down and make her a little smaller, make her look like she fits in here, and you can compare. Looks pretty good, and put her maybe a little bit more over in this area. Okay, that looks pretty good. But what we want to do is we want to flip her. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this right now, and then go under Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Okay, now we have her in the right direction. And let's see, compare her to the other one, and she's way over on the side. So you can get her as as close as you want. That's good enough if you want to. You can put her wherever you want actually, but make sure she's at the right size. She looks pretty good to the size we want. So the next thing we want to do is we want to create that shadow underneath her. So we're going to go over, here's where the woman is right now, so you can see in this light layer, and we're going to call this woman. Oops, gotta spell it right. Okay. And we want a layer below that for the shadow. So I'm going to go down to the balloon shadow layer, which this should be up here anyway. So I'm going to move this up underneath the balloon. That's the dragon balloon. shadow, or I can just call this dragon shadow. We can call it that. It makes more sense. And then woman. So if you want to, you can hold the Alt key on Windows or Option on Mac and click, Command key and click on the new layer, and then it'll create a new layer below it. Or you can just click on a layer above it and put the layer above it for now, and then we'll move it below. This one would be woman shadow. So we're going to make this into the shadow layer, and I'll move it down after we actually create it. But what I want to do is get in pretty close to this and to see where we're going. So the direction of the shadows, as you can see how the direction of the shadows are going in that angle, and you can actually see also on the truck over here, you can see the shadow of the truck is going in this direction. So it's in a pretty detailed angle in this direction. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and get my paintbrush again, and I have it set to this blue-gray color, so I'm going to leave it there, keep the opacity way down. And in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the brush smaller because I kind of want to mimic what it would look like for her leg. And then I want to click in this area. I'll zoom in so you can see a little bit better. You can see this good enough. But I'm going to click right here, and then I'm going to figure, okay, this is the direction of the actual shadow. Now I'm not clicking, doing anything. I just clicked once here, and then I go over to the area where I think it should go, and then I can click back. Okay, same thing with this one. I'm going to go ahead and click in that direction, and click. Now I could make this brush a little smaller, may work better. So when I click, it's going to make more of a line from there to there. And that's pretty darn good. So the one thing that you need to know, see, this is over the top right now. So let's go ahead and pull it below the woman layer. So I'll show you here. This is the shadow we're working on, and this is the woman layer. So we want to pull this down below, see how it highlights. Put it there. Now what you do want to do is make a little bit darker shadow next to the feet, because they are always going to be a little bit darker than everywhere else. So you can see as I'm painting this in, it's getting darker. Now remember, I have this on, I just have it in normal setting. I set it for the dragon shadow, I set it to multiply. So I can use this at multiply, may make it darker and make it look a little bit better. You can see by looking at it this way, it may be a little bit better. It's not exactly the correct color, but it's going in the correct direction. So okay, so I want to make sure I go back to that color. Okay, and it looks pretty good. I may want to change this back to this woman shadow. I may want to change it more to, I have it at the normal instead of multiply. It might be a little bit too dark. So multiply may look a little bit better. I mean, normal or even darken might be better. And then you can get this darker if you want to. You can go ahead and make sure you pick a dark color. And I had a pretty dark blue color picked in here. And I made it even darker. And I accidentally just clicked earlier and made it lighter. So I want to make sure this is pretty dark when I'm putting it in here. So you can see I'm going to click once, go over here, click once, go over here. So there you get the idea of what I'm doing, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. And that's your shadow for her. I think that's good enough. If it gets to be too much, you know what, back in here, what you can do is go to your eraser tool, and not your magic eraser tool, but just a regular eraser tool. Make your eraser pretty good size. And you know, if you notice I did this with a hard edge, and you can see the actual hard edge on it. So if you go to the soft edge brush, you can, or eraser, you can erase a little bit and not go too far. So I went a little bit too far on that. But you can see you can modify this slightly. So if you want to, go ahead and modify it. So you can do the same thing with this if you want to with the eraser tool. So you can see as I do this, I'm going to go in here closer. You can see what I'm doing. Make this bigger, and then click once here, and then click all the way to the other side holding a shift key down, and it'll make a straight line. Okay, so that's how you can erase in a straight line, or you can draw in a straight line. Now that's pretty good. It's getting smaller as it's going away, so that's the way it should look. Okay, so the only other thing that's left, I think that's it. You do not have to do the type up at the top. You don't have to do that. Sharpening is the only thing that's left, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. So sharpening, we want to sharpen the background. So I have the woman shadow I just did. We want to go down to this one. You want to go ahead and right click and go to convert. Now I want you to see this, so I'm going to have to move this up a little bit so you can see. So right click, convert to smart object. Okay, then it creates this little icon. Then you go under filter, sharpen, smart sharpen, and then go in here and zoom in. You can see this is making too much of a highlight. You can see if I click with my mouse, that's before, and let go. See how it accentuates the outside of everything too much. So that's overdone. So the amount needs to come down, and possibly the radius a little bit. So you can see what I've got this at is I want it to sharpen a little bit, but not too much. And if you want to zoom out, you can zoom out and take a look at it that way. That's before, it's after, and maybe even a little less than that. It's because it's a fairly low resolution image. But see the difference on here? You can see a little closer. So I click, that's before, and this is before, that's after. So you can see there's just a little bit of difference, and maybe you want to raise the radius up just a little bit. So you want to see a change. So you can also see it in here with the preview. That's before, and that's after. So you can see how nice and crisp it is. So just go ahead and say, okay, that's good enough. And there's your smart sharpen, and that's sharpening. So that should be it for this file. Go ahead and save it with your name on it, and make sure you send it in to me. Make sure you save it as a Photoshop file. You can fine tune some of these things. You still need to do, some other adjustments. I would say you may need to do some color adjustments or some levels adjustment. Color and balance you could do. But on the basket, you may need to, darken or lighten this a little bit by just going into mid-tones. Make sure this is clipped when you do this. And then you can see this should just adjust the basket, as you can see, and you can darken it up a little bit, which would be great. And you can see, when I turn this off, you can see it darkens it just a little bit. She could get maybe a little bit darker too, but she looks pretty good. But that's the basics of what I want you to get done. I do want you to use as much as you can of all the adjustments that we've talked about, like the brightness and contrast levels or curves. You don't necessarily have to use the exposure or the vibrance, but hue and saturation is probably a good idea. We may need to adjust the hue and saturation, and I think I did that on the actual dragon balloon, so you can take a look at that, and then you can make some adjustments in there if you want to. Maybe the colors, you can increase the reds or the blues, maybe even the blues, you can increase that a little bit more, make it more intense. You can make it darker or lighter, that'll help. Even the reds, you can go in here to the reds, increase the brightness of the reds, so his mouth color stands out a little bit more. So okay, but I think that's it pretty much. So that's about all you need to do. So hopefully you get a good picture of what you need to do on the skills test, and that you follow everything properly, because that's a tutorial for today, and that's the end of my tutorials. So that's tutorial number 3, and that's the final skills test review. Incomplete.